It says right on the back of the circuit board, F, couple of symbols, K, U China, made in USA, Philly. It's printed on every circuit board.
Y'all, Bangshift Billy, Mr. Bill Armstrong, is a total badass. Listen, the stories that we're about to get into are great, but the product he's developed is awesome. I can't wait to hear more about that. We're going to dive deep into that stuff. But tonight is the first in a series of what we're going to call the business of burnouts, which is people like Bill Armstrong who are obviously involved in the performance aftermarket. Guys that do events, host events, create products like what we're going to talk about in a little bit with Bangshift Billy and all of that. And so this is going to be an entire series that we're going to keep going with. I have always been super interested in how people develop products, how people bring those to market, and then, what's it like to build something for people and put it out there in the world and it sell, like you sell your first one, you're like, holy shit, we've got stuff in the world. Somebody in another state that's not a friend of mine bought my product. You know what I mean? So I'm excited to go through some of that. Yeah. I will say that this is the first real interview in the series of the business of burnouts. This is a new deal for us. I've always, like I said earlier, I've been super interested in learning the story, letting the product developers, owners of shops tell their stories. And obviously we're going to dig in a little bit deep here. This is a super cool product and we're going to get into it right now. But first, Destroyer 1320 made this for us. So we got So that's too cool. I really appreciate him.
That's
if
awesome.
You guys want something like that, reach out, mydestroyer1320@gmail.com. You can get that kind of stuff. Telling the story of Bangshift Billy today. This is going to be exciting. So I'll give just a quick recap for folks that weren't here in the beginning. The series, the business of burnouts, we're basically going to talk to people that live and breathe the performance automotive. We'll dive deep into how and why they got started, how products are developed or discovered, if they sell stuff, and how they market those products and what the future looks like for their business. So why don't you just start out and tell everybody where they can find more info about Bangshift Billy, like websites, social media, all that kind of stuff.
Yep. So the website is just the Bangshift Billy. Oh, wait a minute. No. See, I don't even know it. It's just bangshiftbilly.com.
Cool.
So there's links to the videos. There's a YouTube channel called the Bangshift Billy, Instagram Bangshift Billy, and it's just videos, kind of an introductory, kind of a funny, goofy video.
Yes, it's hilarious.
Introducing
dude.
it.
It is hilarious. I love it. I was at work watching it, dying. It was good stuff.
There's some intro videos, and we making a lot more, but it really talks about the digital clutch controller, kind of how it started and everything. And so basically, in a nutshell, what the Bangshift Billy is, this is the shirt. If I can figure out,
yeah,
camera's backwards, see, but that's the logo. It's a digital clutch control device that allows a diaphragm style clutch to operate like a slipper clutch at the drag strip, and you adjust it with an app on your phone.
Dude, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, and what's crazy is, like, you developed it. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah. So I can take the laptop and we could go down into the laboratory.
Oh my God, let's go. Let's
can show
go.
you okay.
Yes. So I will say, while he's walking, his YouTube channel is really good. He's got a couple really funny videos on there. I will say Bangshift Billy is a character on there that is hilarious, but it gives a really good demonstration of what it is, how it works, some in-depth knowledge, kind of on that setup. So definitely go subscribe to the channel. Obviously do that. And here's where we are.
Okay.
This is
so
the
here's
lab.
the laboratory.
Is that an old
And you'll
TV
see some
stand?
of this in the video too. Where?
I was gonna say it looked like an old TV
don't know.
stand or a desk or something that you work on, your workbench there.
Oh yeah, it's just an old desk.
Yes.
Let me see if I can do this with the camera. So this is actually the clutch, the McLeod clutch that I went 890s on right here. So this is a test fixture that I built. You can kind of see that. Back here we have just a regular, it's a Wilwood clutch, master cylinder here. Goes into the hydraulic portion of it. So you just come out of the master cylinder into this, and then out of the master cylinder to this. I have a pressure gauge here just for testing purposes, not necessary, because I didn't know how much PSI was involved in a hydraulic clutch. And I can tell you this one has, I don't know, 2,500 pound pressure plate, something like that. And it's only 300 pounds of pressure. So it's a lot less than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But you go into that, and then here we've got the Bluetooth controller. And we developed this. So this is the circuitry that you connect to with your phone. And we can try to show you the app a little later. I'm going to set this down and see if I can put this in a spot where you can, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. If you go to the video on the YouTube page, you can totally see it. But when you plug this in, you'll get an LED light here showing power. And we'll see if this will work. So I don't know if you could see it.
Yeah, we could definitely hear it for sure. Oh yeah. That'll be a great. Will you point out kind of what they're going to be looking for?
Yeah, so this is a hydraulic release bearing here. Yeah, see. Oh, there. No.
Yeah.
So you can see when you push it, you get this gap. This is releasing the clutch. Now, when you dump it, see it's holding and then releasing. So that's, without getting too detailed, when you go to flip a clutch, it's going to approach a bite point. So like the first 3 inches of the clutch pedal aren't going to do anything. The last 1 inch is what we need to control. So on the app, it will help you figure out what that bite point is, where the clutch starts to bite or start to engage. And then you're going to go into the bite point a little more. So with the app, you can control in milliseconds how long the clutch pedal releases, and then it stops. And that's what you're seeing there, is it's hitting the bite point and then holding it there for how long you want to slip the clutch, and then it's releasing. So like that, it's holding it there, and then it releases. So that's really what it would be like right there. And you could see the very small gap. But that's all prefaced by, so here's the clutch pedal here, and here's the switch that releases. As soon as you release the clutch pedal, it's hard to do holding a laptop and everything, but when you release it, that's when it starts the timer, and then you dial it in to slip the clutch. So what I found, and another thing too that Adam Dory helped with, is on the clutch controller.
Mm-hmm.
This is also a 12-volt output. So when that thing is doing its thing, it's also outputting 12 volts. You could run it to a light. In some applications, you could run that to a 2-step. So the 2-step will shut off as soon as the clutch controller is done doing its thing. So there's lots of applications for it. And I can tell you that we're working on, yes, it's a slower release than just popping it. But the difference is, there are some clutch controller devices out there, like Magnus makes a hydraulic one that's adjustable with a pintle valve, and I've experimented with those, and it can work really well. Of course, we've probably all heard of the clutch Tamer, and that physically mounts to the clutch pedal and releases it. The challenge with that one is it works really well on a car that makes 500-600 horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
But it modulates the clutch unless you hook up some kind of special linkage so the thing drops away after the launch. But you have to mount the whole assembly under the dash. And a guy that just spent 60, 70,000 on a Corvette or a Camaro or a Viper or something like that, he's not going to want to cut up his dash to do.
Yeah.
It's basically a hydraulic adjuster for a screen door. And they work really well. Don't get me wrong.
That's awesome.
But I'm not going to cut open my dash to put that in there.
Yeah.
And then the Magnus one, it works really well too. But the problem is it modulates the entire stroke of the clutch pedal, which is fine for race week. But if you want to go bracket race, how are you going to cut a light when it's slowing down your clutch release?
Yep.
Like how do you go to launch and then it's going to take time.
Yep.
So with this, you still launch it with the clutch. It's going to release as fast as you can. You just sidestep it, and it'll go right to the bite point. It'll hold it there for,
however long
quarters
you
of a
decide.
second, 1 second, to whatever, and then it will release. And if you look at the videos on Instagram, I have a couple videos of with it and without it from the same exact day, and you'll see the difference. Like literally without it, it's so freaking violent. The side windows of the car are shaking.
Yep.
The tire just boom, it bounces. And
Yep.
over the years I've upgraded the suspension and shocks. I finally went with Mensers, which they're not inexpensive. They don't give those babies away. Because I had QA1s and they just couldn't control the rear end because it was driving the tire so hard into the ground that it would bounce and then it would spin.
Yep.
And with the clutch controller, everything is so much softer that I probably could get away with the QA1s now. But I have Mensers.
Yeah.
And actually did the fastest 60 foot of the week on air shocks. So maybe my Mensers are a little bit tight.
Yeah. If anybody can find somebody that's gone, how fast did you go on air shocks?
916 at 163.
Yeah. If anybody can find anybody that's been faster, not your uncle that had a car in the 70s, that's been faster on air shocks, please tell us.
With a stick.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at any rate, so what I found is there's three things that happen with a stick car, and the videos outline this really clearly. But you're either going to spin the tires, it's going to bog if you have traction and you launch it. It's going to and then accelerate through. So the data curve is going to be like you're on the two-step, and then it does this huge bog, and then it just has to recover and climb out of that.
Yeah.
Ideal slipper clutch looks like this, and it's like an automatic. It just goes up to the gear change. On the Bangshift Billy, and it's an in-between. It's not going to work on a maximum effort stick car. You're still going to be better off with the slipper clutch.
Yep.
But a dual purpose car where you're going to drive it on the street, that data log, I've got some that do assimilate that curve. It's not as smooth, but it makes a huge difference. So you're either going to spin the tires, bog, or break parts. Those are the three things that are going to happen. When you slip the clutch, the motor is maintaining power. It's also, if it's a boosted car, the boost is building. It's not going away. And like I said, my car went from, like it had run a handful of 9.0 passes. One of the race weeks it went a 9.02, and that was the quickest it would go. As soon as I put the clutch controller in there, the car was running consistent 8s, and then it went 870s. I mean, we handed time slips in at every track and Midwest drags, and they were all 8-second passes.
That's crazy.
So
that is crazy.
It's super exciting for me because, I mean, it took 3.5 years to get to this point with it. And it's been a lot of time and frankly, a lot of money invested. I mean, I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm not a software coder. I don't know how to build a circuit board. So I've had to hire people to help with this stuff, and I've had to educate them because a lot of these guys, they don't know anything about a car and racing, and I have to explain how the clutch works and what I want it to do. And we're there, and there will be constant revisions in it. And I can tell you, the clutch control I just showed you downstairs is version 1.0. We're currently working on 2.0 for newer cars. It will plug into the OBD2 port. It will get all the data. It will get all the data that it needs from the CAN bus network. Because right now, I'm using the Holly only to trigger it which basically it provides a 12-volt signal to it, and then when you release the clutch, the 12-volt signal goes away. But on the Holly, and you can set this up on a carbureted car, but on the Holly, the way I have it set up is, and you could do this with any aftermarket ECU, but it needs to see 3 parameters before it will send that 12-volt signal to the Bangshift Billy. It needs to see miles per hour less than 3. It needs to see TPS, I have it set above 90%, and the clutch pedal has to be pressed. Once one of those 3 goes away, it drops a 12-volt signal and it never comes back. Because when you make a pass, your miles per hour goes up over 3 miles an hour, hopefully, and it won't trigger it again. So it only works on the launch. It doesn't work on subsequent shifts down the track.
That's a big question I had earlier, and I sent you a message. I'm like, hey,
you did, yeah.
How about this? And I think that's pretty neat. My immediate thought is the all-wheel drive guys. Like my thoughts, DSM, Mitsubishi, Ford G63 cars that are all-wheel drive, first and second gen Eclipses. Those cars to make power, they run a huge turbo, and
you forgot to mention the Subaru crowd.
Yeah, those guys too. So, and I'll tell you what, I sold Mitsubishis for like 5 years as the Evo came out. So like Evo is life, STI, it's okay.
So here's the thing. Shauna Betty, who took 2nd place last year in the stick shift class because I broke. Like we really broke it. It was bad. And that was the first race week I never finished. But he finished 2nd place. He's got a badass Subaru. It runs bottom 9s. Which is insane. He has a prototype of this and was going to run it this year for race week. Had some issues leading up to race week, and then unfortunately didn't finish. But I'm very hopeful that we're going to get some data for that.
Yeah.
And I really think, I think I tried to do a bunch of research and stuff before I pulled the trigger on just flushing all this money away to design this thing.
Yep.
So I tried to get an idea what the market size is. It's really hard to know what that is, but I honestly think the import crowd may be one of the biggest customers of this. And the reason being is nobody makes a slipper clutch that I'm aware of for any of those imports.
Oh, wow.
And
so like all the fast Honda guys, like that's what kills those cars is the hard launch and axles, so this would help an axle live a little longer too.
Yeah. So they've got, multi-disc, super aggressive clutches, and they're using the Magna steel, they're using the clutch tamers, those types of things to modulate that clutch so much. But I feel like, and that's one of the things, like with an adjustable slipper clutch, like they're awesome. You set the base pressure, you got to do the counterweights, you do all that through a hole this big in the bell housing under the car. But when you get in the lanes and it gets hot and you can see the cars in front of you blowing the tires off, tracks going away, you're kind of stuck with the tune-up that you put in the clutch in the pits.
Yep.
The Bangshift Billy, you can say, I need to soften up the hit a little bit. You can just make that change in an app on your phone right there in the lane.
That's wild.
All buckled in. So yeah, it's super exciting. Like it's been quite a journey, because the premise of it is to make this as much as I can in the United States, because I love this country, and frankly, a lot of the issues we have are because years ago we started outsourcing stuff, and now we see like penicillin is a perfect example. We had a huge need for it. Well, we constantly do. And then when COVID hit and we stopped importing stuff from China, it was like 80% of our whole penicillin production comes from overseas.
Yep.
Why the heck aren't we making that stuff here? And it all comes down to the dollar.
Like it's penicillin. It's not like it's some crazy thing,
Well, Christ, it wasn't. It was created here.
Yeah.
It was created in this country by, was it Dr. Salk or something in the 40s?
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. And it's just frustrating to me. As a matter of fact, if you guys haven't seen some of the Instagram posts, and I could go grab one of the circuit boards, but it says right on the back of the circuit board, F, couple of symbols, K, U China, made in USA, Philly. It's printed on every circuit board.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So that leads me into, a lot of times folks will, use China once they have, or Taiwan, or one of the other countries, where people work for $2 a week, because they have the system sorted, right? What are some of the struggles? Well, let's back up. What is the benefit, obviously, other than supporting local hardworking Americans? What's another benefit to use like U.S. based, like to have U.S. based companies build that?
Well, I get to put FU China on the circuit board, so that's pretty cool.
That's the number one. That's number one.
No, so, and I'll tell you, I mean, there are bits and pieces. Some of the parts that we source, like the hydraulic pieces, they're commercially available stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But as I started looking at it, the fittings that I was getting from them, they say right on them, made in China. And they're literally like 65 cents a piece.
Yeah.
And I refuse to use them. I'm going to be using what are the ones I'm thinking of? What are the U.S. made fittings that Motion sells?
Brain
it's
not Russell. It's not Russell. Who is it? I don't know. Anyways, thanks to Motion Raceworks too.
So the fittings they're like $7 a piece. That's a huge piece, and there's 2 of them.
Yeah.
So instead of spending $1.20, I'm going to spend $15 on 2 hydraulic fittings, and I'm okay taking a smaller margin on the product. It's not Earl's. It's not Earl's. It's another one.
Dang it!
I'll think of it. At any rate,
yeah,
I'll take a smaller margin to support and keep it local. I mean, I just will, and I'll be honest. There are some of the electronic parts that I just can't get here. We have to get them from overseas. It is what it is. But yeah. And
hey, it is
honestly,
what it is for right now. I think the chip shortage will have a ton to do with our future. That type of building stuff here in the States.
Part of it, I don't know how much you've read into that and the chip shortage for the automotive industry. So part of the problem is the technology they're using is so outdated that the chip manufacturers are having to go back in time to build the chips that they need, because they haven't really embraced 21st century electronics technology.
Wow.
So they're like, we're having to go back and build chips from you guys we were making 20 years ago.
That's crazy.
In these brand new cars, and it's just they haven't evolved that fast. And granted, the electronic industry evolved super quickly in that technology, but they're using antiquated stuff. But it just is what it is. So
that's crazy. So that's really cool. I mean, like, what are some of the challenges you run into with running US based, like assembly and all the all the things that come from that?
Well, it's been fairly easy. So easy is relative.
Yeah.
But like it's just faster. I mean, I would imagine if you try to outsource this, you've got to deal with it being shipped from across the ocean.
Yep.
There's going to be a communication issue potentially. Those types of things. Like I can talk to like the guys that are building the enclosure. They're in Minnesota, and the one I just showed you downstairs, that's a prototype. But yeah, it's like I sent them one of the boards, and I said, "This is what I need. This." They send me that, and we're making a couple of revisions, but it's real close.
That's awesome.
And same with
like you can overnight that. You can, if you needed to, you could overnight that part to the folks in Michigan, and they could overnight it back, and it wouldn't cost you $2,000 to get it to somebody in China.
Right.
And that's part of the other struggle too. Is like there's 70 boats on the water right now, probably more, trying to get into the port. Like there's not 5,000 Bangshift Billy sitting on that thing, and you're going, my God, are we going to get here by Christmas?
You're waiting for sneakers and dildos and stuff to be unloaded before your project. So,
yeah, that's right. Hey, priorities, man, priorities.
That's right. But no, and it was interesting. So I was sourcing parts from TE Connectivity, and part of their sales thing, and I'm just like, I'm ordering like a handful of things, and they're calling me. They're like, "Hey, how can we help you? What can we do to help?" And I said, I need a PCB manufacturer, and I didn't say PCP. I said PCB, like printed circuit board. But,
I mean, hey, whatever you're into, bud.
That's
Whatever
right. That's
keeps
right.
you up developing this product. That's what we need.
Yeah. So they came back to me and they said, yeah, this advanced circuits deal, and they're in Aurora, Colorado. And I'm like, did you like base this on where I live? And they're like, no, they just ordered tons of stuff from us. So they're like, I mean, Aurora is an hour from me.
Yeah.
So they asked me for the shipping information. I said, I'm not giving it to you because I'm picking it up right there.
Yeah.
And I drove down.
Don't even put it in the mail. I'm coming.
Yeah. And that was super cool to go down there and see their facility. Like, it's mind blowing, the kind of stuff. Like, our first run was 4 prototype units. And we had to make a small change. We're going to run 4 more. And that's super expensive. But I got to make sure it's right.
Yep.
And once the second run is done, if everything tests out good, then we're all set. I just pull the trigger on, I don't know what that first production run's going to look like, maybe 500 units.
That's
it's
pretty
really
cool. So
it's
do you
totally,
think do you think you'll do, and this is earlier in the questions than I wanted, but do you think you'll do like a big pre-order? You know what I mean? Like to kind of help fund some of the.
So we already did. We did.
Cool.
And this was on a suggestion from William Fowler, actually. Set up the YouTube channel. I created and launched an Indiegogo campaign. If you're not familiar with what Indiegogo is, if you're familiar with Kickstarter,
yep.
Kickstarter is more designed for literary stuff, movies, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Indiegogo is more for products like electric bikes, cars, coffee makers, that kind of stuff, Bangshift Billies.
Yeah.
So we launched an Indiegogo campaign, and that just ended last week. But we had special pre-order pricing on that, and we raised some funds for that.
That's great.
To go towards production, and we had T-shirts and stickers and stuff. I think one person bought a T-shirt, and I think we had 17 or 18 pre-orders. 2 are going to Australia, 1's going to New Zealand, and the rest are in the States. It's crazy. Like, it's so cool.
I think that would be the coolest thing about this is like this is something that can be used everywhere, and you start thinking about just like you've said, just the ramifications of everyone being able to use it, and like how they can take that and make their car faster.
Well, and honestly, there's other markets that have kind of bubbled to the surface that I had never even thought about. Like, for example, Lewis Floquet with Crowler. They make all kinds of engine parts, but they have a huge clutch division. And they were wow. You know what? Our tractor pull guys might be very interested in this. And I'm like, I don't know anything about tractor pulling, except they blow stuff up all the time.
All the time.
All the time. But they run clutches, apparently. I didn't even know. And, And, I know the stick shift stuff is, from a production OEM type standpoint, is going away. And I don't know if it's because I'm more tuned into it, but it seems like stick shift drag racing is really making a comeback.
Yeah. Well, I mean, damn, dude.
Do you see that?
You're changing the world. Like 870 passes. People are like, I got to get some of that. I mean, here's the thing. Like, Garrett does such a good job of bringing good content to, I would say, tons of young people. Okay. So,
dude, he's a genius. Yeah,
well,
he's great.
And he's a great dude. And he does stuff really well. His editing is good. He's just a good dude. Right. And so when you start thinking about a kid that's 16 years old that gets his dad's Honda Civic or his dad's, I don't know what would be a rear wheel drive manual trans car or truck, that would be something that would be as offered as
like a Toyota pickup.
Yeah. I mean, like if you're a 16-year-old and you're watching him, you're upgrading your car, you're putting stuff on it, you're trying to go faster, you're getting into that. And obviously with Leroy being a stick car, that is a huge car for the stick scene. So then, you obviously followed the trend of 1320 covering that car, then 1320 following yours and Rich's car, and all of the other stick cars that have come along and been fast. And you put a 20-year-old in behind the steering wheel and a stick, they're like, this is where it's at. This is where it's fun. you know, and so I
That
definitely
20-year-old,
think,
yeah.
yeah. So
Well,
I
that 20-year-old
definitely
decides
think
they
it's
don't want to
coming
put
back.
they don't, yeah. Yeah, the 20-year-old decides they don't want to carry a purse.
Hey, now automatics are generally faster.
They are, but you gotta have somewhere to put your purse. So
Well,
no,
I
and
mean,
I'm just kidding. I have
well,
so much respect for the fast auto guys. They have a lot of challenges as well
hey,
too. So
here's what it says right here. Now, if nobody follows Jaws at BNC Performance on Facebook or on YouTube, you need to go do that. Super cool channel. He lives in Hawaii, has a 57 Chevrolet. If you are any, you know, like he says, real hot rods have 3 pedals, and that's the truth. I mean, it's always been like that, you know. So,
yeah.
all right. So I have to ask this question. Where did you even know where to start? Like, I know you probably had the idea of like, how can I do this? But like, I mean, you developed a product out of your brain. Where do you even start with something like that?
So I mean, I knew what I needed to create, but I just didn't know how to do it from. So I had to cheat and look at Motion's website. It's Fragola is the fittings. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's killing me. I'm like, God, what is that? So yeah, so I started thinking about it, and so I started looking at ways. Like, I don't want to give away kind of the whole background to it, but
Yeah.
there are commercially available Bluetooth devices to control hydraulic stuff, like
Oh, I got you.
equipment,
Okay.
all
Yep.
that kind of stuff. So I started messing around with that and got involved with that. And some of the stuff was super awesome, but it couldn't do exactly what I needed.
Yep.
And I talked to some of these companies, and I'm like, here's what I need. It doesn't do this. Can you work with me? Can you customize your app so that I can put my logo on it and we can do this? And maybe I'm an impatient person, but I was like, yeah. So I hired an electrical engineer, and I said, this is what I need. Let's make it happen. And building the hardware piece wasn't so terrible because we're already using some of the hydraulic stuff that's commercially available and tested millions of cycles and stuff. The coding is what's taken, like, no joke, it's taken over a year to get the coding where it is to make it work. And it's such a simple, in my mind, it's so simple. I'm like, it just needs to do this when the button releases, hold it. And I saw a question earlier. Can you change how fast it applies the clutch once the timer is timed out? Yes and no. So once you're at the slip point, let's just leave it at yes and no. We can kind of go offline to discuss some of the finer details. But there's going to be the basic version that you get when you order it is going to work just fine. If you want to be able to save your clutch tune-ups, because if you're going on a no prep surface on a hard tire, that clutch tune is going to look very, very different than a slick on a heavily prep track. You can get way more aggressive with the clutch. But if you want to save the clutch tune-ups, if you want to get into some of the more advanced functions as far as actually, instead of just a delay and hold and then a release, if you want to do a delay and then a ramp down, those will be the advanced functions, and those will be a subscription type deal. So that's kind of what it's looking like from that standpoint.
That's
Did that answer your question?
right. Yes.
Okay.
So we talked about benefits, challenges of made in USA. Oh yeah, here we go. Did you tear anything up with early prototypes?
Oh God, yes. So Race Week 1.0 this year. Do you remember Adam Dory's car? Even before Race Week started, we were replacing the rear end. That's because we blew up the rear end using the Bangshift Billy, trying to get it set up in the pits. And that was the genesis of it having a 12-volt output, because he was using the two-step to trigger the Bangshift Billy. Well, when we were trying to creep up on the settings, when the clutch got released, it was slipping too much, and then the two-step freaking went to the moon because there was no load. and then the clutch released, and that thing had a fragile rear end in it before.
Yep.
And then you're dumping the clutch at 6,500 RPM. So that was it. It did it once and it was done. So
Nice.
they didn't use it the rest of the week because we put the other stuff in it and didn't want to risk breaking it. Now he upgraded to the 8.8 deal. That's going to be wicked in that. And I got him one of the new prototypes for race week, but they just ran out of time. We didn't get it set up, so they weren't able to test with it. I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to do some testing with it here before the snow flies. I get down there, we'll get it hooked up and so forth. But yes, we've torn some stuff up. I've torched a few clutches. It's just kind of the way it goes.
That's awesome.
But I will say too is I've had multiple conversations with Cale Arneson over at Black Magic Clutches, and he is very behind this because they sell a lot of clutches. He's kind of the guy to go to for slipper clutches, but he recognizes there's a huge demographic of people like myself that don't want to deal with an adjustable slipper clutch. They just don't want to do it at the track.
Yep.
And this is a great fit for that.
Yep.
And then segueing into that, I think in the future, I don't know how far out, but I think it's entirely possible that we release a Bangshift Billy line of clutches that are really set up for this type of thing.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Because I've experimented with I have a twin disc sintered iron clutch in my car, and those can be crazy aggressive for the street. But I've experimented with some different disc compounds, and I've got one in there that drives really nice. Other than the squealing when you release it, it drives really nice on the street. It flips awesome with the clutch controller, and it'll hold 1,300. Well, it'll hold 1,500 plus crank horsepower.
God, that's awesome.
So, and then you could pare that down into a single disc for 300, 400, 500, 600 horsepower car.
Yep.
So yeah, going to be working with Cale on that. I think I don't think it's unruly for me to say that he'll endorse this.
That's cool
because he sees the possibility for this with stick shift racing is growing, and especially with the version 2, with it being able to work on any car that has an OBD2 port. Instead of the Holly having to feed it those, it'll pull that data from the CAN bus and it'll just work. The only thing they'll have to do is plug the valve in, and that's even the power, everything, they'll just plug it in and it'll work. So that'll be pretty neat.
And my immediate thought is you can take a guy that, let's say, picks up a late model muscle car and is going to the track. He could buy this, and we'll talk cost in a little bit, but he could buy this and go to the track. And I mean, you shaved, what'd you say, 3/10, 4/10, half a second off your ET.
Half a second.
I mean, that's crazy. So like he goes out the first time and he's like, he dumps it, it breaks the axle. He's like, oh shit. He goes back home, fixes the axle, buys this product, goes back out, drops half a second, and
I guess half a second's probably the generous side. I ran a handful of 9.0s and then I went 870, but it was more typical to be in the 9.1s, 9.2s.
Well, and you start thinking about just the I'm 40. I haven't daily driven. I daily drive a stick 93 Tercel now. We don't need this part on that, but daily driving something that is performance oriented. You could then this could be a big game changer for a lot of guys that are moderately, going to go to the track, going to make street passes. They're going to leave the line at the stoplight having fun. So it's going to help a lot of that type guy that maybe not like, I would think your car's kind of like, you're not ragged edge with your setup, but you're a fast car. Late 8s is very fast. 870s at 165. That's fast. I mean, I don't think, like we talked earlier, people don't understand what, they see 1320 video. Oh man, car makes 1300. Yep. That's what I want. I want to make 1,300 horsepower.
Dude, it's retarded. You don't want that.
Yeah, right? Yep.
Yeah, and I can tell you, like, just with mine, because it used to make like 15 pounds on wastegate. Dude, anything over about 700 tire on the street, with a radial tire, it's just dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, you really have to pay attention because, I mean, it was really cool. Like, I used to be able to do burnouts at 70 miles an hour on the highway and leave stripes.
Yeah.
I don't know why the back tires wore out so fast, but
Yeah.
But there were some times too when I would get on it and just about put it into concrete wall in the highway, and I'm like, this is just stupid. And now I'm gonna put bigger wastegates on it to control it a little more, but now it'll make 8 to 10, and it's way more manageable, but it's still a lot. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, with
people,
with your, I mean, what's 8 to 10 probably makes a 900,000, something like that, easily. That's
probably
crazy.
Yeah, it's I don't ever want to come across like I'm boasting, but like, people that have a 300 or 400 horsepower car, dude, you put them in a 500 or 600 horsepower car like a Hellcat, dude, that's fast.
Yes.
I mean, it's all about perspective. An 11-second street car is pretty insane. Like, it really is. And honestly, in street mode, my car maybe goes 11 something. I don't even know if it would go 10s because it's so traction limited. But yeah.
And it's funny because I think it was Stone Cipher and I were having this conversation, and earlier in other podcasts I had asked shop owners like Tuned by JP, Jim Parkinson, what makes for a fun street car, and that's what you would consider fast on the street. And it's the same thing, 700-800 horsepower, because at any of that, you've got to have a tire, you've got to have suspension, and you've got to have decent brakes. Like, you can't turn loose anybody in a 700 horsepower car and go, hey, just once you mat that real quick in second, because it's going to blow the tires off and they're going to be spinning and the wheels cock like this and they're going to let out. And then it's just immediately that direction,
Yeah, they honestly have to work up to it. Like I said, my car made 3-second jumps from going 16s to 12s or something. And at the time I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, it was nuts. And then it takes, 500 is perfect. Like, 500 tire is a lot.
Yeah. And then he says with a stick.
Yeah. It's plenty.
Yep.
So, yeah. I mean, honestly, when I drive my car, very rarely will it see 8. Like, the tires are pretty much spinning by 8 pounds. If you're ever lucky to catch a glimpse of 10, it's because it's just gone, whoa, boom. And it's just like, woo. Yeah, and with bigger wastegates, it'll make less boost. It'll probably be even funner because it's just,
you'll have a little more control.
Yeah. So
that's crazy. So how many of these are currently in operation in cars?
So mine has one of the first hand-built prototypes. There's one should be up and running at Adam Dory's CTSV, and then Shauna Betty has one in his Subaru, but I don't know that it's hooked up yet for getting data. So yeah, it's a little frustrating for me. I want to have it in all these cars and get testing and get data, but I know how it goes. I mean, they've got to get their entire car ready, not just get my clutch controller in and test it. I mean, I gave it to them. They're free, and Adam he's been helpful with a lot of thoughts and ideas. Adam and Rich have been, for years. I would sit on the couch and I'd talk to Rich and I'd be like, dude, what do you think about this? Or how about this? And like, some of the main functions of it are because of those guys' input. And yes, it's possible in an old car like yours with a carburetor, you can set it up and wire it. It's not a problem.
The key to the setup is the hydraulic clutch setup.
You have to have a hydraulic clutch, and you have to install a clutch switch that you can adjust so that you can adjust it right when you release the pedal. That switch opens, and all it needs is you run 12 volts to that, and you run that 12 volt signal to the Bangshift Billy Bluetooth controller. And as soon as that 12 volt goes away, meaning as soon as you dump the clutch, that's when the whole controller does its thing. And if you wire it up through a line lock, so that the line lock has to be pushed and the clutch pedal has to be pushed, you could have your line lock together, and then when you release the line lock button, they're in series, so then it won't work again on subsequent shifts going down the track on an old school car.
That's awesome. So Stephen Hicks has a 66 Impala And so here's what I'm going to say this. Stephen Hicks and I were supposed to race my old truck against the Impala last year for our drag and drive event in April that we do for charity. He didn't make it then. He's going to make it this time, and the race is back on again for bets. We're betting each other, obviously, for donations for the charity. So I'm going to need for him to have one of these Bangshift Billies, because I don't need to have him give any excuse when I beat him.
Nice.
Yep.
So, and I'm not sure who Jaws at BNC is, but
yep.
I can go into some more detail. A brake light switch could work, but you need something that's going to be adjustable and highly accurate, because that switch needs to be able to be adjusted, because we're talking about adjusting it down to the thousandth of a second. And I can tell you that, like at Midwest Drags, I made a pass that was like 890s, and I changed the setting in the clutch controller by 0.02 of a second, and the next pass went 870.
I mean, that's crazy. The amount of just that minute control, and like those switches. I mean, is that going to be something that'll come as part of like the 2.0 kit, or we'll need to source that?
So the 2.0 kit, any of those newer cars already have an OEM brake or OEM clutch switch that it will utilize.
Oh, I got you. That makes sense. Well, so I was thinking like 2.0 for for Jaws is 57. Like, will he source that?
Yeah, he'll have to source a switch. On the YouTube channel, if you watch some of those, I'll show a picture of the switch that I put in my car. It's it's $100 switch. It's an Omron switch, but it's super high quality, and you can totally adjust it. I mean, it's got a little roller wheel on the end of it. There are some lower cost options that you can get, and I think they would work, but you really want to set it up. Like the way I set up mine is on the clutch pedal. There is a, see, this is so weird because it's opposite of what I'm looking at. So on the clutch pedal, as it comes and hits the switch, this rod is a fine thread bolt. So I can totally tune that point, and it's fine thread, so it's even more adjustable than a coarse thread. And then you just lock it down with a lock nut, and it's set.
That's pretty awesome. That's so I mean, I'll just put it in D and drive and do burnouts. So it's really interesting to me how that kind of stuff can work. It's pretty awesome. So
and frankly, what I'm doing with the clutch controller is not any different than what the DCT transmissions, like what's in the GTR. They have launch control, like any of those, like the Audi R8s, any of those cars that have those dual clutch transmissions, they're doing the same thing. The OEM is doing it. That's how they launch, because it's a clutch transmission. It has two clutches, and when they do the launch, it's doing the same exact thing. It's flipping the clutch. It doesn't just engage it, because it'll blow the transmission apart.
Yep.
So
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So he says there's no one here in Hawaii has anything like that, and there are a lot of stick guys, mostly Volkswagens.
Oh yeah, that would be fantastic for them. As a matter of fact, did you guys see that 10-second black Volkswagen that was at race week?
Insanity.
Dude,
that dude,
so awesome. I talked to him quite a bit, and he has a clutch slipper device that he had devised off of some type of thing for some industry. I don't even know what it was, but it's under his seat, and it's really cool, and it friggin' works. I mean, a 10-second bug that still has a VW motor in it, with a turbo, it's air cooled.
Yeah, like it was wild, man.
Yeah, I was expecting to see an STI motor in that or something, and it was still a VW motor, air cooled. I was like, that's badass.
Yeah, it was crazy. He said 10s is a streetcar here in Hawaii. That's crazy.
That's fast. Yeah, that's crazy. That's awesome.
Yep. And the cool thing about, like, I would think that region of the car scene would be very small, like, because you're on an island, like, so it's not, you're not going to another island, to do that. So that's so cool. Huh. That's pretty neat. So you said Volkswagen earlier. So is your daily driver some little shit box, like you got like a Passat, a Golf? What do you daily then?
No, I have so I have a 2015 Volkswagen Golf Sport Wagon TDI. It's a 6-speed diesel.
Yeah.
It's the very, very first brand new car I ever bought. I bought it. It's a kind of a funny story. So my buddy Bill Leak, again, he had a diesel Jetta, 350,000 miles. He creamed an elk with it and totaled the car. But I was like, yeah, because I drove Subarus and I do a lot of driving for work, and like 30,000 miles a year.
Dang.
And I was like, the diesel would be nice because he gets like 40, 50 miles a gallon.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to go test drive one because I'll buy a used one. Well, unbeknownst to me, the morning I went down to test drive one at the dealer was the first day they were allowed to sell these. They had a whole lot full of 2015 diesels that they hadn't been able to touch for 2 years because of the whole Dieselgate thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, and they were giving 0% financing for 5 years. I bought the car for like $22,000, brand new.
That's
brand
crazy.
new.
Yeah.
And so proceeded to do a couple of mods, put some really good headlights in it, like on the upper model ones, put a little bit bigger wheel on it, and then I put a Kerma tune on it. And it's pretty awesome. Like it makes like 350 foot-pounds of torque.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
That is a fun little car, I'm sure.
And I get like 44 miles a gallon. It's ridiculous.
Well, hey, listen, 30,000 miles a year, if you're gaining like 5 miles per gallon over what you were, that's a big swing.
I went from a Subaru that got 24 miles per gallon, so I doubled it. So the amount of cost savings in fuel alone pays for half of what the car payment was, and it's $300 a month. Yeah, because it's 0%. So
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Dieselgate worked out in your favor for that one for sure.
It sure did. And yeah, the car is great. So.
Yep. So if someone is super interested in getting themselves one of these now, like how do they do that? How do they buy one? How do they get a hold of you?
So go through the website, bangshiftbilly.com. We've got Travis Foster, I don't know if you know him, but he's helped me set up the website and do all that. And we have it set up there with it's a Shopify deal. Again, we're not planning to be shipping any of the pre-orders until December because we're still getting manufacturing lined out, but we have time. So yeah, so that's about it. And like I said, we're working on developing 2.0 version for the OBD2 type stuff as well. And you can still use version 1 in an OBD2, but it'll be a much cleaner install with the second version.
Well, I mean, like, plug that thing in. It's so much easier for maybe a novice, new to performance person,
Yeah, for sure. So, and cost, because you mentioned it, and I'm sure people are asking. So version 1 is priced at $875, and people are going to go, whoa, that's expensive. But let's think about when you don't have this and you go and you break your axle in your new car.
Yeah,
they're like at least that much, or you blow up the transmission, or you blow up the rear end. I mean, you're in for a couple $1,000 when you start blowing up that IRS stuff in the back.
Yep.
So this is significantly less money than that. And when it's set, you're not going to break that stuff, because on a newer car, and some of them are very fast.
Yeah.
One of the first things people do is put a sticky tire on it. And as soon as they get traction, as we talked about earlier, you don't break stuff until you get traction. And once you do, you're going to start inducing some carnage. And this will help reduce that carnage because you're not shocking the drivetrain when you dump the clutch. Yeah.
So Richard, who is Dirty Panda on YouTube, he's been putting an LS 240 together, and so he's he's T56 set up in it. So he's definitely gonna be needing this because he's coming after some of your like his goal is some of your time like ET time out of that car to run close to what you run or faster. So
well, at 240, he's probably got at least 1,000-pound advantage already. So yeah, come get you some, because it won't be hard. 1,000 pounds is, and honestly, you look at Garrett's car, Leroy, it's 800 pounds lighter than mine and 1,000 pounds lighter than Rich's car. If I dropped 800 pounds, would my car run 8.0s? Probably.
Yep. So that's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
But to me personally, it wouldn't be worth it to do that. Like with what your car is, and like how what I feel like how well it would drive. Just because of how much I see you drive it, I'm going to get us some passenger seat time in that thing next year, though, for sure.
Deal. And here's what I can tell you: when it's raining outside, I just roll up the window. I don't need to put on a rain suit. I don't have to wear earmuffs. We have a conversation. Oh, and when it gets cold, I just turn the heat on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's where it's at. We don't get to do that in the cart. It gets super cold, and we were putting cardboard on the doors to try and knock some of the wind off of us. So it wasn't as bad this year. The mornings, last year's 2.0 was pretty chilly.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's exciting. So tell us what the future of Bangshift Billy is. I mean, you talked about a clutch line, maybe.
Yeah. So there's a number of other products that we're going to be developing that don't have anything to do with stick shift racing.
I like it.
Yeah. I don't really want to spill the beans on what some of those are, but
yeah,
there are going to be some game changers, I think, as well. Like I'm just amazed that some people haven't come out with some of these things yet, but we're going to develop them and get them pushed out there. So yeah.
And then obviously, I mean, I think an OBD2 port setup will be, I think that is game changer for what this is, because it's super easy. App-based stuff.
And it'll be a pass-through plug. So when they have their tuner or whatever they plug in, it's not going to hog the port. They can plug it right in the back.
Oh, that's nice.
And still keep that stuff. So yeah.
That's even better. So I just think of how everybody could then use it. It makes it easy for a novice person to throw this in and shave a little bit of time off of their ET or off of their street times or whatever.
Yep, for sure. So it's exciting, and I want to say thank you for inviting me to be on this and talk about it.
Oh, dude. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I think so. Thanks.
It's super cool that you can take something that was obviously something you felt like you needed and then develop that and come up with it. And, all that came out of your brain, dude. That's pretty cool.
It's been a little crazy the past, for sure. I have trouble with patience with myself mostly. And 3.5 years, it's been torturous. Really has.
I can only imagine, and the cool thing is I would think, and this is my opinion, but once you get one in that's not in your car, you get one in and it's somebody's do this, or it needs to do this, and you're making changes. I would think that would completely re-energize me. It would just right to the moon. I'm back in the middle of it.
Yeah. And honestly, Sean and Betty Subaru, it's been bottom nines, and I really believe that this will help put that car in the 8s, because it's all about the launch. He has all the traction available.
Yep.
But they break a lot of transmissions because they don't make billet transmissions for the Subarus. They're running stock trannies.
Yeah.
And he's making 900 horsepower.
yeah.
You combine that with all-wheel drive, traction's usually not your problem. Braking parts is. And if you can control that clutch engagement down to the millisecond, it's a game changer.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty cool. Well, dude, I really want to say thanks. I want to say thanks to everybody that's watched tonight. It's been an awesome turnout. I really appreciate that from everybody. I do have a last favor though for all the folks that are in the chat. If you'll drop down, if you're on YouTube, if you'll drop down and make a comment in the regular comment section, that'll help us get back in, that'll help keep us in the rhythm with YouTube, and we would be super appreciative. If you hadn't done it yet, I mean, you got to hit the like button. This dude just spent 2.5 hours, 3 hours we've been on a work night, a school night, whatever it is, talking to us about cars and all that kind of stuff. So,
dude, and you know what I didn't even get into was this.
I know, we didn't even. Hey, listen, I got time. It's only 9:30 here. So, but I want to say thanks. You stay with me. I'm going to close this down.